All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201. That's client-side scripting at Durham College, and it's the winter 2020 semester, week 5, part 1. We're talking about jQuery today. So I'm going to start off with some lecture slides a little bit today because the jQuery is pretty fat with stuff. And I shared the slides with you up online, I think. They should be up online now. Under content, yes? Damn, now I gotta check. Let's take a look here. I think I did it. Yes, I did. Okay, so this should be up there. So if you want to follow along instead of looking up here, you're totally fine. So last week, Dom, and we did a test. So that's what this last week was. Not much there. This week we're doing jQuery, and we're talking about how to select elements and how to use built-in jQuery functions. Okay, so over this week and next week, I'm going to try and compress jQuery as much as possible into a week, and also talk about things around forms. I want to really focus on forms. We still have to cover that part with JavaScript form validation. jQuery is pretty good at that kind of stuff, but I want to go into forms because I think it's a valid thing to talk about with forms, because we do so many forms. We do like at least login and log out forms. There's forms about different things, and I also want to talk about regular expressions a little bit, which we haven't really covered, right? So I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to cover regular expressions in other courses. Yes?
I think so.
Okay. Steven? Yeah, yes? Regular expressions? They seem, someone's shaking their head in the back? No? Kind of, sort of? Okay. Okay. They're useful. I think they're fairly... Okay, so jQuery, we know what it is. It's a JavaScript library. Back in the day, it was one of the most useful, I would say popular libraries out there, like ever, right? Because it reduced the need for you to know a lot of CSS. CSS wasn't that powerful. HTML was also HTML4, so it had less features. And jQuery was like that middleman, if you will, between JavaScript and advanced functions. JavaScript is also, as you know now, a little bit unruly if you let it be, right? It's loosely typed. It can look like spaghetti code if you're not structured, and most developers couldn't get a handle on it so easily. So they made, developers got together, made a library, jQuery. So jQuery can break down across different kinds of functions, and I'll talk about some of the things that it does, right? So the core functionality of jQuery that we're going to be talking about is selectors. jQuery was made so that it looks very similar to CSS. So when you do CSS selectors, you're going to see jQuery, it's the exact same way, right? So if you know CSS and how to select stuff with CSS, then you know how to access jQuery. And this is why jQuery was so popular in the past, because if you're a person who's more of a designer type, a web designer as opposed to a web developer, then JavaScript may have been too much for you. But jQuery was a little shorthand that gave you the ability to use CSS selector type syntax to select elements, just like we've done already with our document.getElementById. You don't have to do that with jQuery. There's a whole other way of doing it, and which we're going to talk about. So selection and traversal, like we talked about, manipulation and CSS, events, lots of events. For example, the IFI. jQuery doesn't require an IFI. You can use something called document.ready, which is kind of interesting. Different kinds of special effects, animations, Ajax. I think this is where jQuery really shines still. User interface stuff, not as much anymore. I think back in the day, they had a lot of things like accordions and collapsible areas and different things like that that were really popular at the time. And I think a lot of that you can do with just CSS now. And Bootstrap is a good example of that. So that's where it was. These are all the categories that they had. We talked about the content delivery network. I kept on saying, CDN, all this kind of stuff. And jQuery does use or is available on or through the content delivery network. So we also talked about Bootstrap on the content delivery network, and so is Font Awesome and a bunch of other tools we've been using so far. So what's the advantage of the content delivery network, where it's like this, like we talked about before, right? So imagine if, I'm going to go to my server. So here's an example of not using the content delivery network on the left, and then me using the content delivery on the right. You can see that once the content delivery network is used, there's a higher chance that that library that you wanna kind of create is already being in use somewhere else, right? So this is the advantage of using a CDN, and we will. I think that's the right way to do it. I think when you have when you're into distribution mode and you're distributing your your website, you want to move towards a CDN eventually because it's just faster at the end of the day. However, there are some disadvantages from it. If something happens with the CDN, for example, sometimes it happens, it's rare, but the CDN drops. You can't access it or something. Then some things that really that happen that are really weird would be like things like Bootstrap's not working and you have like no style. That can happen, right? So this is where I kind of like I don't like it. But it's very rare nowadays because of the pervasive network of the internet. I mean, it's not like before. If this first came out, people were like really worried. Oh my God! Well, what if I don't have access to to the internet somehow? Well, if you don't have access to the internet, then your website would be down anyway, right? That's the idea. So it talks about how to do that here. There's 3 different CDNs you can use. You can see here jQuery was at 1.9 when I recorded this one. And if we go up to find jQuery now, right? So if I go to jQuery.com, you can see that we're way ahead, 3.41 jQuery version. However, there's been some incremental increases or improvements over the last little while that again there's not that in terms of crazy advancements. There's not crazy advancements in jQuery. So if you look at the API documentation for jQuery here, a couple places that you can learn how to use it. So again, you can see that there are some stuff that's been deprecated, things that have been deprecated over the time. Even the documentation I'm showing you, even the stuff in the book is deprecated. There's a lot of stuff and deprecation means it works, there's support for it, but they're not going to continue to develop on it, and you should move towards the new API, the new function, whatever that is that they made, right? So, these are all the different kinds of commands you can use with jQuery, which we'll talk about. We won't talk about all of them, of course, but this is some. The other way to look, for jQuery is W3 Schools. So W3 Schools, great resource again in general. For free, I don't know how you can go wrong with some of the information that they really pump out there. And if I look for jQuery here, so jQuery, for W3 Schools, you can see that they've got some great tutorials that'll take you through all the latest things. So here's an example of that document.ready, like I said. So document is the DOM. When it's ready, do a function. What is this? An IFI. That's exactly what this is. This is like, doing this is like doing an IFI, right? And then you can see that the way it's going to look is, okay, I got $. $sign is really, when you use the $sign symbol, it's like saying, hey, jQuery. You're calling out to jQuery, the whole namespace. And I'm saying, hey, jQuery, I want to look for a paragraph tag. So get me something that has a paragraph tag, add a click event handler, and here's the inline function, right? That's how shorthand it is. However, take a look how this looks. For most developers nowadays, when we see this, especially now that we've been trained in a classical inheritance in C++ or in Java or in C#, this is bad. This isn't like descriptive anymore, right? Sure, it's shorthand, but a lot of times you don't want it to be like this because it becomes less human readable. The more shorthand something is, the less human readable something is. And a lot of times not that the jQuery library is very big, right? But you can do a lot of this that we're going to show you without the jQuery library. Almost everything that you can do with jQuery nowadays, you can do without it, right? In which, I'll try and compare side by side. So that's the CDN. So there's also something called jQuery UI. So jQuery has another project called jQuery UI. Let's go back to that. So if I go to the jQuery website, on the top there's a bunch of tabs. And if you look at the second tab, that's jQuery UI. jQuery UI has not been updated for a long time. But basically it has all these widgets, accordions, autocomplete buttons, and so on, date pickers. And there's a bunch of out-of-the-box kind of UI elements that you can download and install with jQuery. But guess what? So does Bootstrap. So does Flat Design and so on, right? There's a bunch of other things that have the same things. And at the end of the day, I don't think that you need a lot of this stuff. For example, I want to do some kind of slider control. as an example, you can probably find a lot of this without using jQuery. Date picker is kind of useful. When you click on there and a date pops up, that's still pretty commonly used. That kind of stuff. Menus. So I want to click on menus. You can see that you can kind of look at some of this stuff, what you can kind of come up with. Progress bars, which are kind of interesting. Here's a progress bar that you can see, and so on. And you can look at the source. One thing that the API documentation does is you can see the source, and you can see how they did it. So that's kind of interesting, and it's very similar to what we see nowadays. And you see how easy this is to kind of put together. So ease of use-wise, jQuery, you can't beat it. Readability-wise, sometimes I would say I'm critical about it. I'm like, wait, we keep talking about commenting. The code should comment itself. It should be self-documenting for as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you're making an algorithm that's not quite self-documenting, and that's okay, right? But when it looks like this, you're like, wait, what does this mean? And if you forget, if you come back to this like 5 years later, right, you'll be like, wait, what does this do again? Because it's not human readable. It's not something that you can look at and go, I don't get what this does. So that's something that we also have to talk about. So that's part of it. Other functions that you can do, does slideshows, carousels. I mean, how often have you seen slideshows and carousels anymore on a modern website? They're gone, right? You don't see slideshows and carousels anymore. Back in the day, it was a thing. We wanted to see some kind of picture image carousel, then jQuery. Nowadays, it's kind of, I don't know, passé in some ways, right? No one uses that kind of thing anymore.
What is a carousel?
You don't even know what a carousel is?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so imagine if you have an image and then you go next, and the image goes.
Oh, okay, sure.
Right. That's what and it looks like it's kind of like in this circular thing. I mean,
Also, it's used for banners.
I guess, but I mean, banner's different. That's more of a slideshow. It's slideshow is one thing, but then again, there's if I'm gonna who wants banners on their website? Do you want banners on your website? Unless you're gonna get paid for them. I mean, as an example, and that's they're pretty annoying ads.
Like the upper half, sometimes they have it.
Maybe, yeah. If there's something that's self-advertising, I totally agree with. But if it's advertising other sites, no one wants to go to a site that has tons of banner ads, right? Those are terrible. Let's talk about basics of jQuery programming, right? So again, it's all about selectors and filters to start off. Selectors and filters. And we're going to basically manipulate the DOM just like before. So the way it works is this. So whatever the tag name is, get your $, and it's, again, CSS style selectors, dot class name, tag dot class name for whatever the tag is, and then star finds all the elements on the page. All right, that kind of stuff. So pretty straightforward stuff. Here's how it looks, $ selector. That's how you do it. And then from the $ selector, you can do something called selector chaining or functional chaining, where you can select something, then press the dot accessor, do something else, press the dot accessor, do something else, press the dot accessor, and you can do a bunch of commands all at once. And so it's okay, but again, human readability wise, it becomes difficult to know what you did going back and go, wait, what does this do? From a one-liner perspective, it can be very powerful, though, and flexible. So I think you have to talk about that part as well. It's not just one thing. So here's an example. I want to select all the paragraph tag. Notice that this is select all. Select all. Hey, jQuery, get me all of the paragraph tags on the page, right? Hey, jQuery, get me an ID, element by ID. Get me an ID with, frequently asked questions kind of thing. Hey, jQuery, get me this class, all elements with a class of plus. All right? Okay, so let's think about these. Hey, jQuery, get me. Hey, jQuery, find me. Return, whatever you want to call it. So let's get back into some coding, because I like looking at this stuff, and this is for your reference, absolutely. But I'm of the mind that we need to code. That's the way we learn how to be better at this stuff. So I'm going to bring up our last lesson from last week, which is, that's the wrong one. Our last lesson from last week, here it is, which is, kind of 3A. That's kind of the one we were using last week, 3A. We also had the review that we did last week. I'm just going to use 3A, and we're going to modify this one. Again, the one I'm going to be using is up on GitHub. So if you go to github.com and then you go to, well, everyone's coughing today. If you go to Durham Programmer, then you can see that there's lesson 4. We can totally use this one as well. This is kind of a review. This is the review that we did for the test. I'm okay with this one too. It's fine, right? So we can download this one. Let's use that one then. So that's this one here, lesson 4, review. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it. You guys can use the same one from GitHub if you want, or another one that you want to, if you want to put together from scratch. Let's not do stuff from scratch, guys. I think we can do more without starting from scratch now, okay? So I'm just going to copy this right now. And we're going to call this 5. I'm going to put this up on GitHub immediately for you guys so that you guys can follow along if you need to. But let's talk about this. So here, let's just redo this. We'll call this lesson 5. Lesson 5. And I'm just going to sorry, I've moved fully into dark mode now, so sometimes my windows are confusing. Okay, let's go here. So here is what we did last time. Let's change a couple things. So this is not lesson 2, it's lesson 5. I'm going to also get rid of anything we don't need. Here's hello world. This is okay. This stuff is probably a good start. I want to make more than one page. We've been hovering with one page this entire time. I think we have to graduate into like multiple pages now. I think we need to do that. So let's go back into my scripts. In my scripts, I'm just going to wipe this out. So I'm not going to put this in here right now. Just to do a little bit more cleaning, I'm going to clean this up. So I'm just going to go in here and just clean up all this stuff that we talked about before. Actually, I'll leave this part there. That's okay. But this stuff can go. Okay, and all this. This is all the stuff we talked about for our lab. So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff. We don't need this. And all this. All right, so that is a clean document. I'm going to go save, and I'm going to go control backtick. One thing you can do with GitHub is you can remove your remote. Remember what a remote is? It's just a connection to GitHub, to the GitHub repo. I want to make a new GitHub repo, and I want to use the same commits. I don't want to lose my commits. I don't want to lose my progress for my application. Let's say you're working in an application. So I can get rid of my remote like this. I can say like git remote remove origin. And the origin is just the name of the remote. It's a friendly name for the link. That's all it is. So if I do this and I get rid of it, now there's no remote. But I still have all my commits. Git is not destroyed or anything like that. The other thing I want to do is my package.json. I forgot to do this. I got to change this to 5. I just want to keep up to date, right? So that way we know we can track our progress. And there's also a README file that probably says the test or something. And this should be 5 as well. So I'm just changing all these so that way we know what we're looking at. Lesson 5. So going up online now, I want to make a new repo. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to call this WEBD6201 Winter 2020, and it's again lesson 5. Okay. And it creates this space. And again, some of you figured this out, that you can just copy these last 2 lines of code, copy it, go back to your command prompt, and right-click. And when you do that, it actually creates your remote for you. And if you press Enter, it'll push everything up to GitHub. And that's how it goes. If you've already logged into GitHub, you won't have to do that again. It just takes your last credentials that you had here, and you're good to go. Okay? So this is the thing that we're working with now. All right, also, if you make changes and you don't save them like I just didn't do, I might be able to update stuff. So in Visual Studio Code, I can go to this little button right here, right, which is built in. You don't have to do command line. Once you have your GitHub working, you can literally do everything from here. So click on this. You can see that these are the changes. I made my index package.json readme file and app.js changes. I can click on this little button here, which is stage all changes. This is like doing git add dot. That's what this is like doing. Okay, so I click onto this. I've just done git add dot. Instead of doing my command line stuff, magic, it's done here. And then I can put in my commit message like updated, project for week 5, let's say, right? And then if I click check mark, it's like doing git commit -m and then my message. That would have been my message. And then if I want to push, I can go to these ellipses and just go push, and then we're good to go. It's up on GitHub. You can use the interface as opposed to command line if you want. Okay, this is all built into VS Code and recorded so you can use it later. Okay, so we're ready to go now, and I want to talk about that jQuery stuff. But if I go into my code, I'm in my app, and we know if you look at my index.html, I have some stuff to latch onto. Let's suppose I want to latch onto my main content, an ID of main content, and I want to use jQuery this time instead of something else. Well, things that I'm not going to get rid of. I'm not going to get rid of my iffy. That's just like good stuff, right? So, I mean, I could not do that, but I'm going to go into my start function, and I'm going to start typing $. So $, means, hey, jQuery, right? $, dot, and you can see that if I start typing $, there's a bunch of functions, and you can see that VS Code starts suggesting stuff, okay? Going back to our PowerPoint, you can see how this looks. I can put $, dot, or just $, and then open bracket, and then it basically says, hey, here's our element that I'm trying to query, all right? So I want to find something with an ID of, that's what hashtag means, an ID of main content, right, main content. And I want to return this. I want to return this thing, and I can actually, print this out. I can definitely set up a variable for it, like this, let main content equal to main content. But I want to caution you on this, because when I do a console.log, right, let's see what you get now, main content. So I did this. I'm going to press control backtick, which is going to bring up my server. So I'm going to say light-server. Let's just see how this looks. I'm just going to put this up online for us, right? Here it is. And if I go to my inspect, so I inspect my page here, and I go to console, okay, I don't care about this, but it says KFN init. That's what it says. What the heck is this? KFN init. And then you can see it's got this, main content, 0. What does this look like to you? Yeah, but that wasn't what we got when we used HTML, or sorry, regular document.getElementById, right? Not at all. Let's compare it. So I've just got my main content and container, and that's what it does. You can see what it is, right? You can actually inspect it, go down and see that it says hello world. That's the inner text, outer text, and so on. And it gives you some information, right? It tells you the offset from the top and a bunch of other stuff too, which is really cool. However, if I was to do side by each, let's do a document.getElementById. So let, we'll call it main C just to make it different for now. Forgive me, right? We'll call it content, cont. Is equal to document.getElementById, right? And then we'll do the same thing, so we'll just call it main content like this. So here's the difference between one and the other so far. And then I'm going to just do a log on that one as well. So console.log, and then main content, main cont. Right, there we go. Okay, so what's the difference? And if I go back, you can see what the difference is. One returns the actual element. See? The other one doesn't return this. The other one returns this. In fact, what it says is it's a length of 1, and it returns this. Actually, what it's returning is an array. That's what it's returning, an array of content. And which means that if I want to get what I'm getting here, I have to do this, just like we've seen before. I have to do kind of something that's uglier that looks like this to get the same stuff, right? So let's see what that does for us now. Does it actually do anything? Oh, cannot read property 0 of undefined, right? It tells me I can't do that, right? Did I do it in the right place? Oh yeah, I didn't do it in the right place. How about I do it in the right place, Tom? Meant to do it there. Okay, let's try that again. And yeah, now it's the same, right? But I had to go to that extra step to put in that stuff. Now there's a reason why they do it this way. This isn't just for no reason, right? It returns an array of all elements that have an ID of whatever. So what jQuery is like is using another selector altogether. Let me show you what jQuery is exactly like. Instead of doing jQuery $ whatever, it's like saying, this is the third example, all right? It's like doing, we'll just use we'll call it main query. You can use document.querySelector all, right? And if I use a query for that, here's my query. So my selector is the hashtag main content, okay? And if I go 0, this as well is the exact same thing. Query selector all now is like jQuery. So main query. Okay, so there it is. So those are the 3 ways of doing it. jQuery, you can see that's short. Document.element by ID, standard, and query selector all, which is also something that's part of just JavaScript. And if I go back, you can see that I get the same thing 3 times. Those are the 3 things. I'm getting the same return. I'm hooking into my document, and there's no difference from one and the other. So before query selector all, it didn't work like this as easily, right? Query selector all is the way. You can also do query selector. So there's query selector all and query selector. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I go, instead of query selector all, I shall copy paste. Here, let's just go let main, I don't know, we'll call it first query, equals to document dot query selector. Okay, cool. So now if I open it up, it just says one selector. I want to look at hashtag main content. You got to use the hashtag because now it's a query selector. It's not a get element. It's not an element. It's a selector. I'm using selector syntax, just like CSS. So console.log, and then main first queue, right? So there's first query. And now if you notice, this is another way to do it. There's like 4 different ways to do the same thing now with jQuery. So go back, you can see that it's all the same. Okay, so back in the day, didn't have so many choices. jQuery was nice and easy, and it looked like this, right? So they were like, hey, that's really easy. Yeah, but then it's also less human readable if you don't know what you're doing, right? So, so that's kind of all the same kind of stuff. And I recommend, honestly, nowadays, these 2 are better solutions because it's pure JavaScript. You don't need jQuery. Also, the other thing is, back in the day, jQuery didn't have a lot of support. I couldn't do this. I couldn't hover over and get support for jQuery in any application, right? So that's an advantage. I have to say that's a pro now for jQuery. That's on jQuery's side that it has quick support like this. However, one thing we also want to do is add additional support. If you really want more support, more code hinting, especially when you get into the deeper functions, sometimes it's great to use TypeScript type definition libraries. So let me show you how to do that. So again, Control backtick will bring up my window, and you can use Yarn for this. So if I click, let's do this as new. All right, so if I clear the screen, I can do this. I can say yarn add at types slash jQuery, right? And if I do this at types jQuery, I'm not actually doing anything with TypeScript. But what it does for me if I press add is it actually adds the type definition library for jQuery. And it does it inside of my package.json file. So here you can see that I have types for jQuery. I also have jQuery. Notice that the type definition library is slightly behind my jQuery level. So my jQuery version is 3.41. My type definition library is sitting at 3.331, right? So a little bit before it, but you know what? Probably not much has changed since then. So what the heck does this do? What did I just do with my yarn? Yarn add, let me bring that back up. So I may have gone too fast. So I did this. I said yarn add at types jQuery and pressed enter. Okay. I'm just going to, another way you could do this, notice that these are dependencies, but this at types is not a dependency. It's actually something called a development dependency. So it helps you code. It's not required. If I don't have at types jQuery, I'm still going to be able to do jQuery because jQuery is in my project, right? So I don't have to do this. I can remove it from package.json. Let me just put it back again. I'll do it one more time, and I'll make it a development dependency. So again, dependency means if it's in your package.json, it means that you need it. You can't run your files without it. That's what dependency means, okay? So if I go back to here, and if I clear the screen again, let's try that again. So I'll say yarn add at types jQuery, but I'll say ---- dev. That's a switch for yarn. And what that does is it puts it in a different spot in your package.json file, okay? So if I press enter here, it does the same thing, but now it creates another section in your package.json file called dev dependencies. So 2 types of things. Dependencies needs to be part of your project. If you don't have these things in your project will fail, right? And then dev dependencies, which helps you code better, gives you better code hinting. Maybe it's a linter or some other utility library that you use to help you code. all right, or help you develop stuff. That's development dependencies, right? One developer dependency you can think about, if we didn't have Light Server physically on our machine, and we used -G for global when we installed Light Server. But I can also install Light Server as a dev dependency in each project. So each project is compartmentalized so that you can download your development dependencies, and then you don't have to worry about it. If I just gave you package.json, you can literally do yarn install, and then boom, you have everything that I want you to have. That's another way of doing it, okay? So what does this do for us? What does this @types do for us? Well, before it used to do a lot, okay? Now, less. Let me hover over and see what I'm talking about here. So if I hover over now, I get all this. I get more. That's all it does. It gives me a lot more. It tells me about how to do stuff. It says, it also tells me the type I'm getting back. So it says, for example, if I hover over the $, it says jQuery static, right? If I hover over this or over this, it gives me more. It tells me it's an HTML element. But when I start writing stuff, when I start writing jQuery, it gives me a lot more support. Okay, so I'm going to keep this here because I want just to remind you that these are all, for the most part, equivalent for their effect. Okay. However, if I start going down the line, let's just go back to jQuery, and I want to see something with a class. So all elements. I want you to think about this. All elements is what you want to put inside. Once you've used the $, in your mind, you think all elements that fit this criteria, that meet this selector syntax. That means you're getting an array back. I want an array of elements, right? Not just one element, okay? So if I did that, and if I try that again, so let's say, for example, okay, I want all elements. Hey, jQuery, I want all elements. And now you can see that I'm getting some more feedback. It says HTML element. I'm going to start typing HTML elements, and this tells you more information. This is why you'll get this if you've downloaded, if you installed the my little type definition library for jQuery, which I highly recommend. It gives you more stuff, more information. It actually gives you API documentation right here. Take a look. It even gives you examples. All right, so if you don't know how to type, if you don't have to use jQuery, you don't have to go look on the website anymore, right? Like you literally can go in here and look down here and it tells you everything. That's why I like type definition libraries, okay? Are they required? Hell no. Should you use them? I think it's a good idea. Like, I mean, it's not going to hurt to help you code, right? All right, so now jQuery can be very powerful. So, okay, so string, and then you can see there's other things we can add in. So if I'm trying to find something like on my page, I want to target something. I want to target, let's say, this class with the display-4. Display-4, I can do that, right? I can go back to my app. I can just simply say a class, which is dot, right? And then display-4. So all elements with display-4 dot. And then now you have all these things you can do, right? So if I start typing typing hide, you can see that hide is a thing, right? Hide is a thing. Notice these question marks. Question marks mean what? What do question marks mean? When you see hide and then some kind of parameter list and question marks, what does it mean? It's question marks in a parameter list, yeah.
I usually see it as a ternary operator. Is it that?
No.
Okay.
In this case, I like your thinking, but no, it's not a ternary operator. It's actually an optional. It means that if you see question marks in the parameter list, it means that you may or may not choose to use them. If you don't use them, it's okay, because jQuery's got you covered. All right? So if I say I want to hide something like this, my display-4 hide, and just do this, so that's all elements with that match class of display-4 will hide now. Let's see if that works. So save, and I go back to my website, and then let's see if it's hidden. Look, it's gone. All elements with a display-4. Okay? Okay, let's go back. So what is this, how does this affect my website? And what was affected? Did I take care of the effect that I wanted? Well, the answer is yeah, kind of. I mean, it got rid of this. And this is the only thing with the display of 4, display class of display-4. So that's why it disappeared. Okay? So that's what my main content had in there. Okay? What about if I wanted something else? Like, for example, I want all elements with a class of nav item, as an example, to be bold or something, right? I can target all elements, all my nav items. But again, I can't target nav items. Maybe I want to target things like nav link, because the anchor tag is what I want to target, right? So let's try this. So nav link. So all items, right? All items with a a class of nav dash link, right? Now I want to say that. Let's take a look at what we can do. Okay, so now I can start typing about style. It's not style. How about CSS? Yeah, CSS. And if I open it up, it says property name and the value. So I can literally say, I want this CSS to be applied to all of these elements. So what is the property name? It's font weight, right? Font dash weight, right? And then the value, and that would be bold, right? So let's try this out. Font weight bold. And if I did this properly, and if I put save, so every item with a class of that basically uses a class of nav link, modify the CSS so that it has a font weight of bold. All right, let's see if that works. So go back, and you can see, yeah, they're all bold now. So one-liner to affect everything. But you could do the same thing. If I wanted to do the same thing with regular JavaScript, let's do it with regular JavaScript. You should be able to do this now too, just not as succinct. So you can sit there and go, okay, so hey, document. So I don't want to use any we'll use query selector. Query selector all, because that's the same thing. Query selector all. We want to query select all items with a nav dash link, right? And we want to say that we want to change the style, or we want to change the CSS, right? Or something like that. Notice I'm not getting good code hinting on this one because I want to change it. Now notice it's all items. So every item, a list of items, right? Each item is going to be modified, right? I can't do that here as easily. This is where the disadvantage of JavaScript is. Here, I just want to show you something. If I do this and if I wrap this with a console log, here we go. Let's wrap this with a console log and see what the difference is between one and the other, right? So here's a console log, and let's just get rid of these console logs so I don't confuse myself. So console log. Okay, let's get rid of all this, right? And I just want to do a console log here, and I'm going to bring this back, but we'll do a console log. So I want to, this returns something, right? This actually does something. I can assign this to something. So I can also do a console log. So if I did a console log on just this part, okay, and we're just going to comment that part out because this is kind of the same thing. What are we getting here? What's the difference between this syntax and this syntax? All right, nav link. And if I go back to inspect, what is the difference? There is a difference. There is. This says k.fn init 5. That's different than node list, right? And what this does is it gives me the same things. It's still a list, right? Here is also a list. This has length of 5. This previous object, it has init. A prototype is object. My prototype is a node list. Those are two different. Prototype member is like, in your mind, just think about that's the superclass. You see prototype in your mind, superclass, right? So the superclass for this is the object class, right? The prototype or the superclass for node list, sorry, for this one here is node list. And if I open this up, you can see that it further goes down and that superclass is object. Okay? So I'm just showing you this because there is a difference between this and this. They look very similar, but the functionality-wise that I get between the two things is different. Remember what I can do with document.getElementById, right? If I want to target one element, so if I want to target one element here, so if I just did this, document.querySelectorAll, and I said I want the first element, so the first element that I get back, which is like document.querySelector, right? Then if I press dot, and then if I start pressing styles, now you can see that maybe I'm going to get something, you know, that I'm going to have something, class list or a class name or whatever, right? I have that. I can change my class name to something else, or I can modify my attributes, set attributes. I can do that, right? But, you know, again, if you think about this, style dot is what you were used to, and we can't do that here. Whereas if I was targeting the same thing with document.getElements by class name, which is the same thing except elements by class name, and the element would be the class name, which is let's say, what was it, navlink, nav-link. There it is, that's the class name. So if I did this, and let's just assign this to something just so I can reuse it. So let's, I don't know, navlink is equal to this, right? And then let's console out that. Again, I'm showing you the differences because you need to know what they do, right? Otherwise, you won't know how to tap into them like we've done before in the past. So if I go back, you can see that I get a list of HTML elements, an HTML collection of networks, right? That's different than node list. Node list and HTML element collection, different. Remember? We went through this before. So, okay, so now if I did this, my nav link, if it's a node list, HTML collection, if I go nav link dot, and then again, I can do all this stuff, but it's individual, right? Individual. If I say nav link 0 dot, right? Now I get something else. I can start thinking about style dot display, and then equal to none. I don't want to show anything. That's totally viable, right? I don't get any code hinting for this though, if you notice. Even in VS Code, not a lot of code for JavaScript and done, right? And so you can see I can take away display is equal to none, style dot display dot, and so on. And whereas in jQuery, okay, so this is the advantage of jQuery. I'm showing you both things. Let's go back and let's just get rid of this and go back to that jQuery stuff just for a second. So with jQuery, I can say that, okay, here, jQuery. So instead of my query selector, I can sit there and say something like, hey jQuery, let's get all items with a class list, class of nav link, and let's just hide all those elements, right? Let's just hide all those elements, and they're hidden. Let's show all those elements, and they're shown again, right? Hey, let's click a, let's make some kind of link or whatever. If I want to click on something to make an event handler, I literally just have to go click, right? And then click will actually have, it's the click event. It's the most common thing. And all the most common events, like, for example, on hover, I can do that. Hover event, that's a thing with jQuery. I can show, I can hide, I can do a bunch of stuff. I can even do simple animations, right through with jQuery, because it's all built in, right? So this is the advantage of using jQuery. It's quick syntax. Disadvantage, less human readable, okay? But now with what makes it better is my code hinting that I'm getting back from my tool sets, which is my libraries. Okay, so we know what this is. We've talked about this a little bit. Any questions about selector? Because that's really the start of jQuery. Selectors is jQuery's bread and butter. I want to be able to select something with jQuery. Then I want to be able to affect something with jQuery. And I can do it with no variable, because that's the way jQuery is. jQuery doesn't require variables. Those are some more examples. I can go further down. I can continue doing more selection types. This is exactly now like CSS. I can say, hey, I want all paragraph elements with that are descendants of the section element, facts, as an example. All adjacent siblings. Plus means all adjacent siblings of H2 elements that are div tags, right? Tilde, all paragraph elements that are siblings of UL elements. This is really powerful because that means I can target a bunch of stuff all at once, right? Whereas, I couldn't do this. Greater than means contains, right? So all UL elements that are children of div elements, all of them, right? So this is pretty powerful in terms of the way you can do this, because that's how we use CSS. That's why CSS works so great for us, right? A lot of styling that you can do here. However, going back, do we really want to use JavaScript to style? And the answer is, for the most part, no, we don't want to. However, nothing's wrong with turning on some choice styles and turning it off when we want a special effect. Yes, that makes more sense. But I don't want to use styling. I don't want to have like no CSS style sheet kind of thing and then just do it my own, right? With JavaScript, which is sometimes it works like that. All right, so again, it's all about this. So again, query selector, the name, the method name, and the parameters. This is the general form for jQuery. That's how it works every single time. Okay, general form. Okay, and there's some basic things. I want to change the text of an element. I can just go text, right? I want to get the next sibling of an element or the next sibling of a specified type if the parameter is coded. I want to submit the form. I can do that. I just press the submit button. I want to shift focus from one thing, the very common elements that are used in jQuery. Okay. All right, so I want to get the value of a text box as an example. I have a text box on a form. It's pretty simple. I can say, you see how old this is, var gallon is equal to dollar sign. Again, jQuery, get an ID of gallons and get the value of that ID. Value means the actual thing that you have inside the text box. Okay. Okay, so we can't do elements, we can't do forms without a form. And I think now, like I said, is a great time to move on from the way we're doing things and make multiple web pages. Okay, and I want to do this pretty simply. So let's go back to our code, and I want to start doing that so we have more example code. We need to have more example code because otherwise, we're not doing the right things. Okay, first of all, we're going to start with this. So here's my example code, index.html. Right now we have no links. They don't go anywhere. And I think this is a great spot to start adding some links and stuff like that. I'm going to start naming all of my different pages very simply. Okay, so it's going to be index.html. It's going to be the home link, right? That's going to be index.html. Products.html, services.html, about.html, and contact.html. That's what they're all going to be. So let's just replace these with those. So I'm going to say that this is index.html. This one is going to be products.html. Okay, this is services. So I'm actually going to code it a little bit so we have all those things, changing the script here a little bit. About.html. And the last one, of course, is contact. We're going to do contact. We're going to make a form today. Okay, there's contact.html. Yay, excellent, right? Are you with me? All right, cool. So I want to do this. The Jumbotron says hello world. Maybe we should change this to like, welcome to my site. Welcome, if I can spell, to my site, right? And maybe some kind of action or hero button, if you will, right? So again, just like we've done in the past, what I can do is I can go down to, in my div tag, in the Jumbotron, I can have a button. Right, here's my button. I can also have a button with an ID of something like, we'll call this, I want to get my projects button. We'll call it projects button, right? And my projects button is going to have an ID of, see my projects, or current projects. There we go. So that's the ID, current projects. That's what it says. And what I want is when this button is clicked, right, I want to go to my projects page. I'm going to code this with JavaScript, okay? And we're going to run into some issues, and I want to run into some issues with you so we can solve them, all right? All right, so we have some basic stuff on the page. One thing I don't have on this iteration is I don't have a bottom nav. Let's put that in there too, right? And maybe what we'll do is we'll start doing some breadcrumbs. So on the bottom, when you're going, you'll see where you came from, that kind of stuff. We can start doing that. So again, as a reference, we can go to Get Bootstrap, right? For those people who don't remember, this is not a Bootstrap course, but it's great to learn another framework. I'm going to go down to Components. I'm going to go to Navbar, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to where it says Sticky Navbar. There's different kinds, right? And one of the most popular ones for the navbar is a sticky footer bar, right? So you can see that there's different containers, but fixed top, and then there's fixed bottom. Fixed top is really cool too because what it does is it doesn't move. A lot of times we use fixed top navigation if, for example, I don't want it to scroll. So I want to scroll. I have a lot of content, but I want you always to see the nav bar on the top. I can use fixed top for that. I don't care about that right now, but I do want fixed bottom. I always want you to see the bottom part of my my nav bar. There's also sticky top, which is a little different. So let's grab this part right here, copy, and we did this on the test. Go back and then paste. By the way, here I have a nav bar. Down here, I want to use some semantic HTML. I want to call this footer. And in my footer, I want to do all that stuff. I want to kind of put my footer in my nav bar is going to be in my footer like this. Okay? It doesn't have to be, but I choose to. We'll make it so it's nav bar light, background light. That's okay. And we'll put a copyright statement like we've done before. We'll use an H or a paragraph tag or something like that. Maybe an H4. How about that? An H4 tag. And we'll use a smaller than display 4. We'll make it display 6. So again, if I undo that change, you can say an H4 tag with a class of display-6, right? And I can put the content in here. The content that's going to be is and copy, copyright 2020 or whatever, right? And then I can just click on this thing and it'll do everything that I want, right? So there it is. Okay, so that's kind of a little footer. We have this little footer bar. It's going to be white, kind of. I've got a class, and so on. If I go back to the website now, we should see the footer on the bottom, right? You can see now it always hovers there. However, you can see if I had more content, then I would have. This is not good. Look at this current projects button. This is no good. I want some style on my button, and I want it to be primary, right? So again, if you were to look at navbar, and if I look at components, buttons, you can see that there's a bunch of them. Button type is button. Class is button, button primary. So let's put that in there. So again, so I can say type is equal to button, right? Just following jQuery, Bootstrap. And then class is equal to button, button dash primary. Okay, because that's going to be the blue button. Button primary is blue. Button warning, yellow. Button danger is red. Right? Button success, green. Right? I mean, that's how simple it is to remember. Right? So if you go back, you can see that they're right here. Success. Secondary would be a gray button. Info is kind of like this teal button. All right? So I think it's a pretty good stuff. You can also use a dark button if you like. Button dark. And so on. So there's a bunch of them. And you can also make a button a link. Okay? So if I go back now, you can see that it's going to be styled the way I want. It says current projects. If I click on any one of these things, it's going to give me an error because there is no products page right now. Okay? But that's current projects, right? So current projects, I want to link to a projects page that I don't have, right? So I have products, I have services, about us, and contact us, and I'm going to have a projects page that's only linkable from here. Right? Just to make it interesting. Okay, let's get there. So I want all this content duplicated, and one of the easiest ways to do this right now is to just duplicate the page over and over again. Okay, in the future, this doesn't make any sense. Why would I duplicate my page? My nav bar is going to be the exact same on every page. My footer is going to be the exact same on every page. And this is dying for Ajax, right? What Ajax allows us to do is inject content from different places. Right now, we can't do that because we don't know how, but that's what we want to do. Okay, so here I want to make some 5 pages. I'm just going to copy, paste, or duplicate, right? So I want to copy, paste in here. So one way to do it is to copy and just paste, copy, and then paste, and then paste, paste, paste. So I got like 5 pages, right? And we'll call this my index. This one here will be my, I'll just rename this thing, products. And this one will be rename services, right? And this will be rename about, and then the last one, rename contact. So I have my pages now. There's 5 pages. And let's add one more just for good measure. We'll make it projects because we don't have that. So right click, another one, rename projects. There we go. Okay, cool. Projects, I don't have that as a link, but I can only get through my button. Okay. Okay, not all of them need buttons. Let me go back to my index.html. So index.html, my button, when I click onto it, it's going to go to my projects page. We're going to code that later. One thing to note about each of the pages is this. On the top, if you notice, you have nav link, right? nav link, and then there's nav item active. Nav item active. So I want to take this nav item active, and depending on my page, right, I want to set the nav item active depending on this. So if I'm in my index.html page, then the home ID is nav item active, right? Products. If I'm on my products page, then the class, I'm going to have that as nav item active, right? So to show you this, let's get rid of this active class that's on my home inside my my index, and let's just do the rest for all of them. All of them have to have nothing because now they're exactly the same. Every one of them is the exact same thing, right? So again, nav item active. Let's get rid of that one. And I should have done that before I copied them, but whatever. Let's just get rid of all these. So index is gone. Okay, products, let's get rid of that one too. So no item active. We're going to make it so it's dynamic. Projects. Projects doesn't have a link. We're going to figure that out too. And you're going to tell me what to do. Services. All right, so we've kind of killed all the nav items active, and we've updated the site. If I go back here now, you can see there's nothing active. Nothing, right? If I click products, it's going to say the same thing. The only difference is the products is going to change. Let's change this to say, a list of my products so that something is different here. We'll take away the button. So in my products page, here's my products page. Instead, in my Jumbotron, we'll just say a list of interesting products, a list of interesting products, right? Whatever that is. I don't have a list, but I will, and I get rid of my button. And we can make an unordered list. Let's say an unordered list. And let's put in something that looks like a table, just so that it looks interesting. And you can go to Bootstrap for that. So I want some kind of table, right? Or a list group, forms, data, almost like I want something that's going to show content. All right. So sometimes what you have in content, I just want to make sure there's a list or some kind of data table. Yeah, just to make sure that I go to the right place. So they even have carousel. Spinners. Just want to see something that's interesting. Drop downs, collapse. It's like data. Yeah, I'll look it up. So I want Bootstrap table. That's what I want. Tables, Bootstrap. There it is. I probably went to the wrong place. Yes. And it looks like this. This is the kind of content I want. This is the kind of data I want to have in. Let's just copy this the way it is. Copy. And I'll go back in there and we'll put a data table in my list of interesting products. So there it is. There's my data table. Okay, I don't know what that is, but whatever. They're people. They're not products. Okay? How about this? It's interesting products, but that's what it is. So just to make it different, I want to just make it so that every page slightly looks different than the other pages, right? And that's products. Okay, how about? And then maybe this would be interesting stuff about me. Interesting stuff about me. So we know that that's what that is. Let's get rid of the button. And let's put my paragraph tag with maybe some lorem text, right? Lorem is actually a thing where it actually adds in some random text. That's what it does, right? So we just put some lorem text in there. Okay, so some interesting stuff about me. That's the about. Contact, I want a form. So let's get rid of, we'll still keep this. We'll say contact me. Contact me. And then maybe what you'll have in here is some kind of form. Let's put the form inside. We'll just copy and paste the form from Bootstrap. So again, going back to Bootstrap, I want to go to components. I want to go to forms. And we'll see an example of some different forms. Here's form inputs. And maybe we'll find something that's interesting. If not, we'll make it default stacked layout. I want to make like a contact form. So instead of a sign in with email and all that stuff, a lot of times they have stuff that's ready for you to go. Inline forms, let's just make it, so I'll just grab the first form and then we'll modify it after. So I'll grab this form, so copy. And then this isn't right, but we'll just put it in here for now. We'll modify it in a sec. Okay, so instead of email address, maybe your phone number and stuff, we'll go in here and modify it. Not now. For now, we'll leave it as is. I just want it so it looks different. So we can go to each page looks different. Okay, and we'll modify the site. Okay, so that's this. So about contact projects, we'll have some interesting projects for you, and there's not going to be any kind of, the nav link is going to be there, but there's not going to be a specific nav for the projects. And we'll just use a paragraph with lorem, and maybe, I don't know if it's I don't know if it accepts 500, it does. Lorem 500, so it's like massive. Where is it? Is that enough? No, maybe not. Undo. Maybe it's lorem 300. I used to be able to do like 300 words or something crazy, but whatever. And this will be like interesting projects live here. Okay, some interesting projects. Maybe we'll have some uneven image, some kind of image. And again, you can look at different cards that they might have. So you might have some example cards. With card bodies and so on. This is not bad. Some kind of card for projects. We'll copy that one. And we'll go in there and we'll just paste the card. There we go. Okay? Simple stuff. So all I did was I just went to card, so components card, and copied this thing and to have something. Okay? So now that we have all that, we have a basic site with 6 pages, 5 that are regular pages, and 1 projects page that you can only get to eventually just from the button. Okay, that's what I want. And let's go back to my index.html page, save it, and then go back to my site, which is this one. Go back home, and we can see that all the pages now work. If I go to products, you can see this is my products, services. Hey, we missed that one. Services. We'll make a list of services here. Again, an interesting list of my services. Sorry, just make sure it's different. And then again, we'll do some lorem. Lorem. There we go. All right, there we go. Listening instance of my services. So about us, some stuff about me, and then some kind of form stuff that I'm going to have here. I don't have anything right now, but that's kind of just scaffolded out something, so we have something to talk about. Okay, and it didn't take long. As you can see. For me, Emmet is a really quick way of like putting some placeholder stuff and then modifying it to your content. Yeah.
Where'd you put the card?
Oh, I put it inside of products or projects. We don't have a link to get there yet because this doesn't work. We have to program that. All right. First things first. What I want to do, and we can use jQuery for this, is I want to target our nav item, and I want to add a class. Okay. So let's see if we can do this. So. Again, I'm going to go back to my scripts, app.js, and let's just get rid of some of this. This is just practice, right? So what I want to do is, the first thing I want to do is when my page loads, I want to detect what the page name is. First thing, what's the page name? So the way to do that, we know that whatever the link is, or the actual URL, I can detect the URL, right? That's something I could do. I could look at the URL and I can parse out the name of the page. I could do that. That's something I could do, right? So how do you do that? So again, hey jQuery, I want to get the URL or something like that. Hey, I want to get the navigation. I want to get something to do with this is a selector. So how do you use jQuery to get the nav bar, right? That's what you have to try and do. Because I want to be able to differentiate. I want to know like which page am I on somehow, right? So let's take a look at that. So look it up, jQuery, get nav link, nav bar, or get URL, query string, sure. Let's see what that looks like. And again, there's like so much content online that you can get this stuff. So here, what it looks to me is that might be easier without jQuery, but because I don't want to make it so it's like crazy. Like you see what this looks like. It's a function. That's not what I'm looking for. Query values. I want to just get the URL link. Get navigation link with jQuery. I want to give that. That's the one. Yeah. So this is the page and nav. No. And this is what I want to do. I want to exactly do this. Toggle class active, right, to the link. And what they're doing is, okay, so we can use the location, which is a window, a BOM thing, window.location.pathname. Let's do that. So we'll say let's do that first without jQuery. I'll say, hey, we'll say name is equal to window.location what is it? Path name. And let's print that out, console log. Right, this is for every site, by the way. Remember, this one JavaScript file works for all of my websites. We have to be very careful, right, how this works, because if I'm trying to query something that doesn't exist on the other sites, it's going to fail. Right? Remember, this pulls every single one of these things. When I go there, this has to work. This one file has to work with all the sites. Okay, this is where it becomes more difficult. Okay, so console log. Let's see what the name is. And let's see if it does that every single time. So again, if I'm out here, go to here. And if I do a console log, let's see what it says here in my console. You can see that I get index.html. Yeah? Index.html. And if I go to products, right? So my products page, I get products.html. Right? And services.html. So I get that, right? This is cool, services.html, but I get this hashtag, the slash, right? And maybe there's something else that I can parse even further down. So path is one, location dots, and then what are the other things? Path, host name, right? If I start typing name, you can see that there's two. There's path name and host name. Let's see what host name does for us as opposed to path name. And again, if I go back, it says local host. So if I was on a different host, it would give me the IP address. That's what that does, right? So that's what that does. What else can I do in terms of other things? What other things do I have with location? Path name, host name, origin, and that's really it. Href, that's the actual link, right, to the site, protocol, hashtag, and search. So let's take a look at this one, href, and see what I get there. What's the link? What's the difference between this and path name? And you can see it's the actual link, right? That's what I'm getting now. So if I want to get the actual link to my website back, this is pretty cool, all right? But really what I want is path name, but I need to clean it up. So I don't care so much. I'm going to get a string back. That's what I'm going to get for my path name. And it's going to have HTML. I don't want HTML, right? And I'm looking for, to get rid of the first part of it if I don't need to. However, I mean, I can certainly just look for elements. I can kind of switch on my name if I want to, right? Whatever it is, if it contains, I want to see that it contains something, then I want to do something else, okay? So can I do a query so I can check if something contains something else? String contains. That's what I want to do, right? So again, if I was going to search with my Google Foo, I would say something like, hey, jQuery string that contains something, right? How do I do that? And I can go look for that string that contains, and you can see that there's a thing. So again, jQuery may not have it, but we have something that if string index. Now this doesn't look lowercase. I'm not really happy with this at all. Let's see if there's anything else that's simpler that you guys can find very easily, right? I was hoping to find this. String contains container. So there it is. So again, okay, so example. Select all paragraph tag elements containing is. Okay, I like that. That's pretty cool. But that's for selection. And what I really want to do instead of jQuery is maybe we can use some JavaScript for that. So JavaScript, string contains, string includes method. Sure. How does this work? So we includes, the string contains the characters of a specified string. Awesome. Okay, so if includes something. Hello world. Okay, cool. Let's try that because all our strings are unique. So let's see if it does that. We'll want to see if it's true. So I'm going to say if string contains, so name dot contains, and notice that it looks like this. String includes, and then the name that I'm looking for, the substring. So I want to say index, right? If it includes index, then something like, we can say that console log, this is the home page. Okay? So we want to be able to differentiate between one page and another. There's got to be some way of doing it. All right, so let's go back to this, and let's see how it is. Services.html. So if I go home, now it says this is the home page. Notice it didn't do it on services. Look, didn't do it because it didn't contain, right? So home definitely works. This is the home page. We know how to do that now. So now that I have a mechanism now to switch. I can say, okay, switch a name that includes blah, 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 whatever the name includes. Depending on what the name is, right, I can start thinking about, what it's going to be. I want to switch name, but I want to basically say that if the name includes something, right, I want a name includes. And this gives me a Boolean. That's what this does, right? I can also create a substring, right? And I can find the first occurrence of when something happens. So we're talking about strings now. So again, JavaScript substring, as an example. So I want to find the substring. It's pretty straightforward. So here's my string, hello world, right? And here, substring, I want to start at 1 and go to 4. This is exactly how long. I need to know how big it is, and I really don't know. However, here's what I do know. I know 100% that I don't need my slash, right? I don't need my first character, because when I use the path name stuff, so this path name here, right? And if I go back to my site, you can see I get the slash every single time. Slash index.html. That's what I get. I don't need the slash. So I can start at another character. If I can start creating a substring and another character, that's pretty cool, right? Okay. So can I do that? Can I make a substring of this thing? So let's see if I say console log, and I'll say this is going to be my substring, so name.substring. And it says, okay, start. So 0 based index number indicating the beginning of the substring. 0 based, so 0 would be the first one. I don't want to start at 0, I want to start at 1, right? So I want to start at 1, and then end. Notice the end is got a question mark, which means it's optional, right? So I don't even need to put the end if I don't want to. I know that, though. I know that at the end, right, depending on the length of the string, I'm always going to have .html at the end. Know this, right? 100%, right? I know .html. That means I can omit 5 characters off the back of my string, right? So I want to go from one part to the other minus 5 characters, whatever that is, right? Okay. So can I get the string length? How about can I get the string length? So name.length. Here's the name.length. What's the name length? Let's type this out. Again, this is just some tricky stuff we can do, because that's what we have to do, start parsing, right? So name length, you can say the name length is 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We don't care about the first one, and we don't care about the last 5, right? So what I want to do is, it's 11 characters, right? And I want to go back 5 characters. So I want to count back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to stop there. That's where I want it to end, from the back. So 11 minus 5. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sense? All right? And I want to start at the beginning. So from 1, not 0, to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right here. Okay? So that means that I want to say that I want to get a substring. Let's see what I get now. So I want to use name.length, name.substring. I want to start at 1. I want to start counting at 1. And I want to use name.length, right? And then -5, -5, right? That's where I want to stop. What do I get? Is that right? Right? And let's see if that works. So if I go back, now you can see I get index. This is a good thing, guys. So I've taken my string, parsed it, removed the forward slash, and removed the last 5 things. Now I have something I can play with, right? Does that make sense? Cool. So now this is what I want to use, this part right here. So I'm going to copy this. Name is good, right? But I want to switch it. So I'm going to say that switch. That's how it works. And I can put that in there. Switch this. Okay. And switch statement is kind of really cool because it allows me to do a switch depending on the type of on which web page I'm on. I can decide what's happening. I can do a case. So case it's index, then do something. Case it's products, do something else, right? I like this. Not adhering to standards. All right, and let's just copy paste this part now because we want to do it. So case, I love it. Product services. I'm just going to do it anyway, so I might as well just do it. About, we know it's called about. Case. Contact. No, I'm not saving anything. And just the last one will be case projects, if we ever get there. Okay? List. It's going to differentiate between if I hit one of these things, it's going to give me one of these things. I can also put a default case. So default. What if it's not one of those? Then I got to do something else. So this is actually an error. If I go to default, that means I've gone somewhere else, right? So we can do a console log, maybe a console.error, right, which says landed in a page that is not defined. All right, so that's a catch-all. The default is really good to put in there because it catches everything else. If it's not something, it'll land in my default. I use break because if I don't use break, what happens with switch case? Do you guys remember? If you don't use break, then it kind of it has fall through is what it's called, right? So it'll fall through each of the cases. Break stops it and then breaks out of that conditional statement. A switch case is like if, else if, else if, else if. If you want it always to happen for every case, you can't use a switch case. You'd have to use if. Yeah.
So is there any reason to have it on the last one?
Default?
No, break.
Oh yeah, you need it. You need it.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend it always, just because you never know if you can add another one. It's form,
Okay.
right? Always have it, because it'll just fall through. But yeah, to your point, I mean, it's not gonna JavaScript's not gonna complain if that's what you're asking. All right, so this is good. So if I know if my index.html, now I want to start doing my class changes, and I could do something like this. If I'm on the index page, then I want to use jQuery, right, to select whatever this is. Now I could have done this for all my stuff I want to do, but I already have information here, right? I already have this really cool information. This thing here is the actual site name, right? So I could say this is my name, path name, right? But I could make another identifier called, like, I don't know, site name or page name. We'll call it page name. Page name is equal to this. Hear me out why I want to do this, okay? So I can just do this because I don't have to do this again, right? Copy this, put it in here, and I can use page name in here. It's based off of name, which is the path name. That's what that is. And then what I can do is down here, I can use jQuery. Regardless of where I'm at, I know that if I find something, depending on the path, right, I can search for an item, an ID of something that has this name. So I can say something like, hey, jQuery, right? I want to find an element with a hashtag of this name. Okay. Here's my problem, right? Name is the actual thing. Can I do this? Can I say hashtag with my page name? Can I do that? Is jQuery this flexible? Well, it doesn't care, right? It just needs a string. So that's pretty cool. Hashtag with page name means that an ID of page name, right? And it returns all elements with that. I want the first element, the 0th element of that, right? However, what I want to do is I want to say if it returns all elements with a page name, I want to add a class, which is very common. My class name is the one I want, which is active, right? That's what I want to do, okay? So I want to add a class active. That's one little line that should work based on what I've done up here. Page name is equal to this, okay? Let's see if this works, just this part. We're going to use this for something else, okay? So if I go back, well, that worked. That didn't. That worked. That worked, right? And that worked. Why didn't home work? Home is not home, it's index. That's why, right? So that's the only one that wouldn't work. Only home. But products works nicely, right? And so does services and about us. It gives me that little highlight that I'm looking for, and contact us. And I can do that with a one-liner in jQuery. So really cool stuff. That's where jQuery shines. That little one-liner. And then what you'd want to do here is document this. Something like add a class of active to the active link, right? Whatever that is, right? That's what this does. And you know what? That's okay. All right, how would you write the same thing in JavaScript? Now that we have this, we did a little bit of work to get this substring stuff, right? Here's a page name with a we kind of substringed it. We took the actual string based on the path name, took some stuff away from it, and we're able to get page name. Once we get the page name, we can do a bunch of stuff, right? We haven't done anything yet, but we're going to, all right? But what about this part? Is there something I can do here to make JavaScript do this? How would you code this in JavaScript? Any ideas? So I want to do the same thing that I'm doing with jQuery, but not use jQuery. I want to use JavaScript. Can I do the same thing? Is it just as easy? Right? Any ideas? Yes? Tell me. It's good practice anyway. So I'm going to start off with JavaScript. How am I accessing the element? Usually document, right? So document, let's start with that. Dot. And then I want to access, notice it says query selector. Right, that's pretty good. Query selector. And then I can do, this is just exactly like JavaScript, I think I can hashtag, and then it says string. I can do the exact same thing, right? So I can just do the same syntax so far. So plus page name, so that adds the page name. Now, this is the part that's different. I want to, if I type the word class, it says class name. So this is not something I can do the same way. So add class doesn't exist. I can't, if I start typing class, these are the ones I have. What I can do is replace. That's what this one does. So if I say class name, then I can put in the class name, whatever that is, right? So class name, if you hover over what that is, it's actually a string. So I say class name is equal to, and then if you have to do a little bit more work with JavaScript. You have to go here and go nav item active, like that, right? So if I go back to app.js, I would say nav-item active. Okay, so that's what I'm hoping that it'll do. So whatever it is, let me just comment this out now to show you that this might work the same way. So JavaScript, jQuery. And if I go back, if I go to here, you can see that I get the exact same effect. Okay? So there is a way of doing it with JavaScript. Just jQuery makes JavaScript a little bit easier for some. Okay? But take a look at this. Hey, document. Go use the query selector to find an ID of page name and then change its class name attribute to this. The other way you could do it is set attribute. You can also do set attribute, and the class would be the attribute. Okay? So many ways to skin a cat here, so you can totally do that easily. I'm going to comment this out because we want it. This is about jQuery today. We want to use jQuery. Let's do it, because this is a small one-liner and it makes sense. This is where I like jQuery. jQuery, add class. Yay, that's pretty cool, right? All right, does that make sense? We've added the class, but now I want to do some stuff. Here's one thing I want to do. Index didn't work. So it's index, and this is where jQuery couldn't catch it, but here it can catch it. I know it's my index page. jQuery will catch the other ones, but it won't catch this one. So then we can do something like, only in case of my index page, this is where we're being specific, I want my stuff, which is this part right here, right? I want that stuff to be a class of active, but I'll use document.getElementById. Document.getElementById, and we know the element is called home, right? I want that. That's my home element, right? And it's now curious. When you look at this, this is the home element, and if I go to my index.html just to search this out, home talks about the list item. The list item is the thing that has the class, right? Nav item, right? Nav item. However, nav link is what we're up. Nav link. I updated nav item, and it kind of worked too. Nav item, nav link. Let's see if I can just change the class to nav item active, just like I've done before. So going back to this, you can see that it says nav item active. I want the class name to be that. So I can say, hey, get me the ID of this, change the class name. Here's my class name. By the way, class list tells me everything that's in the class list. Class name is equal to nav item active. So only for the index page, it's going to give, I'm looking for home to do that for me. All right? Again, this is the way I'm coding it, right? So I'm on my home page now, and it works, right? Products works, all of them work now. And that's because this only applies to my index page, nothing else. Why do I need this? If I don't have this as a guard, and I try and hook into a button that doesn't exist on the other pages, it's going to give me a reference error. It's going to break my code, actually, is what it's going to do, right? So why? Because maybe it doesn't exist. For example, if I go down here and I say, okay, hey, jQuery, I want to find something. I want to find something here that, on the page. So here's my index.html page. I want to find this button with a class name of button primary, right? Okay, cool. That button exists. So let's go back. And I want to say, hey, jQuery, I want to find all elements, right? All elements with a class name of button-primary. Okay, because that's how it works. A class of button primary. That's what it works, right? All elements. And I want to hide them, right? I want to hide that element. Okay, I'm just making this up. Okay, so great thing about jQuery is if it works, right? If I go back to my thing, it's gone, no button, right? But what about if I go to the next page? Doop. Do I get an error? This is my question to you. On my console, no error. That's wonderful for jQuery. That doesn't do that, right? However, if I was to do that with JavaScript like this, so JavaScript wouldn't look like this. It would look slightly different than this. It would be, hey, document.getElements, right, by class name. My element by class name is going to be something like button, right? Button-primary. Okay? And I want to change my CSS style dot I believe hidden, or is it display, is equal to none, right? Again, I'm not getting a lot of code hinting there, right? Document, class name, display none, and let's just comment this out. And now you see an uncaught error, right? I don't see, there's no document that, there is nothing like that here. It displays undefined at start, right? So if I go to home, right, maybe I did it wrong. Let's see if I can get to that. Oh yeah, of course, because the elements by class name, I want to go to the first element. Here we go, right? We're good here, right? We got rid of it. if I go back to here, I'm going to get an error. Because you know what? Style of undefined can't work. That's what I'm talking about. Why? Because on the products page, there is no button. Button only exists on the home page. And because it only exists on the home page, you cannot target it any other page. But if you use one JavaScript file to target all of our pages, which is what we want, we need to be able to differentiate between one page and the other. And that's why I have my switch case. Okay? So to help us do that, to compartmentalize our files. Think about it as a page switcher, right? Hey, on that, page switcher seems like a good name for a function, right? So this part right here, this switch paging stuff, and this part, the location path name stuff, shouldn't be in start. I'll just cut it out. I'll take this active stuff too, right? And I'll put this in another function called page switcher. So we'll make a new function called page switcher. And we'll put that in there. So compartmentalize that stuff. And then call page switcher from start. Page switcher. Right? So we call the page switch kind of thing. This part is cool, right? But I only want it to work on my home page. So I'm going to keep adding stuff to start. It makes sense that start is clean, that I know what to do. Page switcher is the first thing it does. It goes here to this page switcher thing. All right, so this changes this. I also want to make a link. So I want to say something like, I want to search for all elements that have buttons in them, right? All button elements, right? And there's only one page has that. And that is my index page, right? I can use jQuery for this. I can say, hey, jQuery, I want to find an element that is of type button, right? And I want to use the click event. In my click event, I can create a handler inline. So I can use the handler inline function that looks like this, right? By the way, that's just a fat arrow function, right? Instead of putting function and then curly brace, I can use fat arrow functions. That's ECMAScript 6, which we covered, right? And I can simply do something like, I want to go to the URL. I want to go to another link. I want to link to another page. How does that work? How do I link to another page? Does anyone know how to get there? Okay, so JavaScript link to HTML page. Okay, so again, script source, yeah. How to link JavaScript to HTML? No. I want to use a button, JavaScript button event. Thank you. Link to page, another page, there it is. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? I want to redirect, perfect, that's the word I was looking for. So on click, location href, you can see that's the way it looks. In JavaScript, okay, I got the page on click and it says location href. Location href is what I want to use, right? So let's do that. So here it is. And I can say location.href, so a different location. I want to change it to projects.html. That's the place I want to go. That's my button. Okay? Location.href changes the reference. Let's see if it works. Right? It's only going to work. It's only going to function on my index page. The rest, it doesn't satisfy the requirements. It's not the products page or the services page or the about page or any of this stuff. All right, cool. Let's go back and see if that works. If I click current projects, now it takes me to my interesting projects here, right? Notice that none of these are selected because there's no link for the projects page. Okay? Cool. I like it. Wow, it really did 500. Look at that. Lauren 500. So what about other things? How can I add a link dynamically? Well, we did that already, right? But jQuery has a really cool thing of doing things where it looks before and after, okay? So if I go back to my PowerPoint for a second, we've covered some of this stuff, right? This is stuff to do with text boxes, which we're going to get into when we finish our form this week, right? Other things that jQuery can do for us is do the ready handler. So click we just did, that's the click handler. Ready, that is equivalent to an IFI. So document.ready. Document.ready is like, you know, the iffy, exactly the same stuff, except it takes less lines of code. And we'll talk about this. So here's the selector syntax we talked about before. Some kind of an event, right? And then some kind of function to follow the event. That's the general form. Okay? Here's the document.ready function. Document.ready, whatever the function is, and then, you know, as an example, here's the alert. You can do this way. This is the new shorthand, and you can go one step further and even get rid of the function and put in the fat arrow function in here. So you don't have to even use document.ready, just have to do this. So pretty straightforward. It looks like an iffy, because guess what? It is an iffy. It's just another fancy way of doing it. Question, should I ever use alerts for anything? An alert is like a message box, right? Or something that pops up. Should I ever use alerts for anything in modern JavaScript? The answer is no for the most part, but there is a case for it. When you're about to delete information, something that you want to make sure the user cannot click away from, that they know something bad is going to happen, that is when you use an alert. The rest of the time, guys, please do not use pop-up alerts for anything. Pop-up alerts like this destroys the immersion that your users have in the website. They go to the website and they're like, God darn it, look at that thing. It's coming up. Every time I click something, another alert comes up. It's pretty annoying. You don't want that to happen, right? So you want to limit those alerts as much as possible. The best case for an alert use case is, are you sure? Yes, no, right? That's a good use case for a pop-up. Are you sure? Yes? Great. No or cancel? Then you're not sure, and it doesn't do this thing that it's supposed to do. We're going to deal with this when it comes to forms, and we'll do it when we talk about how to connect to databases. Sometimes we want to delete stuff from our database, right? And if we don't put some kind of guard, like a little alert that says, "Are you sure?" all of a sudden our data is gone from the database, and we didn't mean to, right? Or user didn't mean to do it, but it's gone. Can't get it back. Okay. So that's long way and the short way, different ways of doing the same thing. So here's an example, a click element. I want to add a click event to all H2. I've never seen that being really, really useful. I'm going to wait for the document to get ready, and after the document's ready, then I'm going to make a click event that affects all H2 elements and says the alert. Okay, but again, not really that useful, right? And we talked about this, the different categories. Filters are really interesting. What you can do is things like all elements that are headers, all elements that are hidden, all elements that are the last children of their parent elements. That's pretty cool, right? So there's some really cool stuff that it does. The nth child, the odd, every odd element, every even element, like those kind of things. So again, some really cool convenience functions that are okay, right? But these are all the same as CSS, by the way. The exact same things. All the selector stuff that we're showing you here is the same. You can do this all with CSS. And here's an example of that. So I want all elements that have of list item type, the first child of that element, I want to target that first child, right? And then do something to that one. I want to target the last child, and so on. I want to look at a table that contains a row, every even row in the table. That's what this does. Give me all even rows of this table, of a table, right? Or all tables in this case, right? How to select the third descendant. This is kind of interesting, right? So the third descendant, that's what EQ stands for, right? And then how to select all the input elements with text as type attribute. Text, right? Input, like that's text. That's edit boxes, things that you're going to put in, right? So this is where jQuery really, really shines, those kind of things, right? Let's get back to our code for 1 second while we finish today. So again, we have these example pages now, and we can go to most of these links, and I'm going to get a link. It's going to show me my active link up here. Different sites have different things. My current page links. This doesn't go anywhere right now because we just popped it in here. If I go back, you can see that this is okay, right? You can see that the index goes proper. All right, questions around so far. We've got to kind of halfway, almost a bit through, about a third through, but I also talked about other stuff, right? Questions around jQuery and how it kind of forms up. Pretty straightforward stuff. we're going to do more work on this tomorrow. This switch case that we're using right here, I'm going to use this switch case. We're going to work on our forms tomorrow in our contact page, right? And I can put specific code in here. Okay, question for you guys. You guys are developers. Before we go, what do you prefer? Code inside the switch case? Or do you prefer this to actually link to other functions? What do you recommend? Maybe I want to ask you for a second. Say you always answer. How about other people down the line over here? Can you answer? Right? As a developer, what do you prefer? This is a preference thing. Do you prefer that I put code inside of my switch case? Or do you prefer that instead of putting it in here, I have it compartmentalized inside additional functions? What do you recommend? I recommend that too, functions, which means that none of this is all temporary stuff. So this is, kind of get index page or set index page or something like that, a setter of some kind. So maybe down in here where I have my my page that's called page switcher, I'll say, I'll say my home page content. I'll call it function. Not here. I go down here. I'll say home page content. So function home page contents. So I'm going to affect that particular page, right? And what I can do with this, and this is just an example of what I probably would do, is get rid of this, go down here, plop it in here, right? And go to my home page content here and put that in there, home page content, right? Why? Why is this really cool? Because it's so easy to read, right? You look at this and it makes sense for us. We want it human readable, like I said. So here I'm in my page switcher. Okay, I'm switching by page name. In case it's index, go to the home page content. You can read it. That's what I'm talking about. The easier it is for you to read, the easier it is for you to remember things. And when it comes back to you accessing a page or doing something with a page later on, 5 years from now, let's say, or something way down the line, it'll be easier for you to remember. You might even still laugh at yourself. You might say, wow, I don't know why I did that, right? But at least you know what's going on, right? All right, so this is pretty cool. Let's just test to see if the pages still work. So again, I'm going to go back up to the website here, and then I'm going to put this up on GitHub, and we'll end for today. All right, so again, you can see that this nicely switches. We got some example content here, and we're good to go. All right, questions around jQuery and within some time. We've created some kind of 5-page, 6-page site. Are we all good with everything that's happening? We're going to continue. We're going to iterate on this. Right, tomorrow we're going to add stuff, but I really want to work on that form stuff because there's some really key things we can do with jQuery and forms from a validation perspective. That's what we want to use jQuery for, because it has a lot of little convenience functions. Can I do it with JavaScript? Absolutely, but jQuery is a little easier. Okay. All right, so let's put this up on GitHub, and then we'll go for the day. So again, you can see that I've got these changes up on GitHub, 24 of them. Why is it 24? Because I've also added in some jQuery libraries in here. So I'm going to add this, stage all my changes, which is like doing git add dot. And then I'm going to put a link that says something like added 5 pages to site. I'm going to click on this little check mark here, which is going to git add dot, git commit -m, and then I add my message. Go to my ellipses and go push. And now this is all up online. And we're good to go with our link. Later on today, what we're going to have, I'm going to put up the link to our little video that I just made. And so if you've missed something or if I went too fast, you can always go back and look at the video. All right, guys? Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for attending.